Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yato niviyat itaratas charte suavikya swarat. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyantiyat Surayaha. Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha. Damna Srena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, for my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji. The original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Pujita Kaitravotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu Shivadam Tapa Trayonmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapurir Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Krite Behi Susu Sabisdakshanat. Completely reject all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantaksto Bhadrani Vidunati Suhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse number 15. Abhibrad Aryama Dandam Yatavad Agakarishu Yavat Dadara Sudratvam Sapat Vasa Satam Yama. Translation by Srila Prabhupada and purport. As long as Vidura played the part of a Sudra, being cursed by Mundaka Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful activities. Purport. Vidura, born in the womb of a Sudra woman, was forbidden even to be party of royal heritage along with his brothers, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Then how could he occupy the post of a preacher to instruct such learned kings and Kshatriyas as Dhritarashtra and Maharaj Yudhisthira? The first answer is that even though it is accepted he was a Sudra by birth, because he renounced the world for spiritual enlightenment by the authority of Rishi Maitreya, and was thoroughly educated by him in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to occupy the post of an Acharya or spiritual preceptor. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyone who is conversant in the transcendental knowledge or the science of Godhead, be he a Brahmana or a Sudra, a householder or a sannyasi, is eligible to become a spiritual master. Even in the ordinary moral codes maintained by Chanakya Pandit, the great politician and moralist, there is no harm in taking lessons from a person who may be by birth less than a Sudra. This is one part of the answer. The other is that Vidura was not actually a Sudra. He was to play the part of a so-called Sudra for 100 years, being cursed by Manduka Muni. He was the incarnation of Yamaraj, one of the 12 Mahajans, on the level with such exalted personalities as Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kapila, Bhisma, Prahlada, etc. Being a Mahajana, it is the duty of Yamaraja to preach the cult of devotion to the people of the world, as Narada, Brahma, and other Mahajanas do. But Yamaraja is always busy in his plutonic kingdom, punishing the doers of sinful acts. Yamaraja is deputed by the Lord to a particular planet, some hundreds of thousands of miles away from the planet of Earth, to take away the corrupt souls after death and convict them in accordance with their respective sinful activities. Thus, Yamaraja has very little time to take leave from his responsible office of punishing the wrongdoers. There are more wrongdoers than righteous men. Therefore, Yamaraja has to do more work than other demigods who are also authorized agents of the Supreme Lord. But he wanted to preach the glories of the Lord. And therefore, by the will of the Lord, he was cursed by Manduka Muni to come into the world in the incarnation of Vidura and work very hard as a great devotee. Such a devotee is neither a Sudra nor a Brahmana. He is transcendental to all such divisions of mundane society, just as the personality of Godhead assumes his incarnation as a hog, but he is neither a hog nor a Brahma. He is above all mundane creatures. The Lord and his different authorized devotees sometimes have to play the role of many lower creatures to claim the conditioned souls, but both the Lord and his pure devotees are always in a transcendental position. When Yamaraja thus incarnated himself as Vidura, his post was officiated by Aryama, one of the many sons of Kashyapa and Aditi. The Adityas are sons of Aditi, and there are 12 Adityas. Aryama is one of the 12 Adityas, and therefore it was quite possible for him to take charge of the office of Yamaraja during his 100 years' absence in the form of Vidura. The conclusion is that Vidura was never a Sudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, here we see, this is real Krishna consciousness. That is, everyone has a chance to go from being an Adama to an Uttama, from the lowest of the lowest to the highest of the highest. No one is precluded from such a possibility. That is the blessing of Krishna consciousness, the mercy of Krishna, and especially of pure devotees of the Lord. So, therefore, it says, Mamchayo, it says, Mamhi partavya pasritya yepi syu papiyunaha tepis antiparam gantim. Striyo Vaishyas tata sudras tepiyanti param gatim. O son of Prita Arjuna, those who take shelter of me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, or merchants, and Sudras, or workers, can attain the supreme destination. So, this is a verse that proclaims the possibility for anyone, be they of high birth or low birth, to attain the perfection. And the purport Prabhupada says it is clearly declared here by the Supreme Lord that in devotional service there's no distinction between the lower and higher classes of people. In the material conception of life there are such divisions, but for a person engaged in transcendental devotional service to the Lord there are not. Everyone is eligible for the supreme destination. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.18, it is stated that even the lowest, who are called chandalas, dog-eaters, can be purified by association with a pure devotee. Therefore, devotional service and the guidance of a pure devotee are so strong that there is no discrimination between the lower and higher classes of men. Anyone can take to it. The most simple man, taking shelter of the pure devotee, can be purified by proper guidance. So that's the whole point. Taking shelter of a pure devotee, one can be purified by proper guidance. According to the different modes of material nature, men are classified in the mode of goodness, brahmanas, the mode of passion, kshatriyas or administrators, the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, vaishyas or merchants, and the mode of ignorance, sudras or workers. Those lower than them are called chandalas, and they are born in sinful families. Generally, the association of those born in sinful families is not accepted by the higher classes. But the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people of all lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna, as indicated here by the word vyapasritya. One has to take shelter completely of Krishna. Then one can become much greater than the great jnanis and yogis. So this is a wonderful verse in Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 32nd verse. And then it says, Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajasayastata anityam asukam lokam imam prapya brajasya mam. So the next verse, 33, says, how much more this is so, the righteous brahmanas, the devotees, and saintly kings, therefore having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. So the whole purpose of reading Bhagavad Gita or hearing Bhagavad Gita and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is to come to devotional service under the instruction of bona fide devotees and pure devotees. So unless one makes that decision in their life, they remain being tossed by the waves of Maya, happiness and misery, riches and poverty, fame and infamy, and so forth. They become a victim of these dualities of life. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, in this material world there are classifications of people, but after all, this world is not a happy place for anyone. It is clearly stated here, anityam asukam lokam. This world is temporary and full of miseries, not habitable for any sane gentleman. So, do we believe this? That's the question. Because everyone is trying to find a place and a position in the material world where they can have sustained happiness and regular sense gratification, whether it's regulated by the rules of Krishna consciousness or is not regulated by the rules of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says there's always a chance of an accident even on the royal roads. That means that even if one is following regulated sense gratification, there's always a possibility of falling down. But if one is always engaged in devotional service and under the guidance of bona fide spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, there's very little or no chance of falling down. Because the difference between a demon and a demigod is that both demons and demigods commit mistakes. But demigods ultimately will take advice to correct themselves, and demons don't. That's the special quality of a demon. Even though they know what's right, even though there's ample opportunity to get proper advice, even though they get the advice, they still don't follow it. Therefore, they remain a demon. So, this world is declared by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be temporary and full of miseries. And then Prabhupada says, but some philosophers, especially Mayavadi philosophers, say that this world is false. But we can understand from Bhagavad Gita that the world is not false. It is temporary. There is it says it right here. Anityam asukam lokam. It is anityam, temporary. That means it has some existence, but it's not eternal. So, therefore, there is a difference between temporary and false. So this is an important point. This world is temporary, but there is another world which is eternal. This world is miserable, but the other world is eternal and blissful. So if it was false, then you wouldn't have a chance of becoming liberated by using the material energy in the service of Krishna. Therefore, the Mayavadis do not accept devotional service as the means to attain, let's say, so-called liberation from birth and death. Their method is dry speculation and meditation. But the devotees, understanding that the material nature is temporary, but it is a inferior spiritual energy of the Lord. It's still spiritual. It's still eternal. If one can use it in the service of the Lord, then instead of becoming a obstacle to spiritual life, it becomes a stepping stone of spiritual life to go back to Godhead. You can use everything material in the service of Krishna because it actually exists. Whereas the Mayavadis say, no, it doesn't exist. It's all false. The only thing you can do with something false is reject it. So they have what's called incomplete renunciation. And the devotees have complete renunciation because they don't declare the material nature to be illusory or false. They just understand it to be temporary. But even though it's temporary, it can be used in the service of Krishna and be an instrument by which one can make spiritual advancement and go back to Godhead. Arjuna was born into a saintly royal family. To him also the Lord says, "Take to my devotional service and come quickly back to Godhead, back home." No one should remain in this temporary world full as it is with miseries. Everyone should attach himself to the bosom of the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that he can be eternally happy. So today we have the coronavirus, and on top of that we have the protests, the looting, the shooting. If there's shooting, there will be looting, or if there's looting, there'll be shooting, right? So we see that there's a lot of anxiety. Everybody is feeling this anxiety. What's going to happen? Pretty soon there won't be any more police. Who do I call if some thief comes to my house? Maybe I should get a gun. Maybe I should move back to India. No, India is the same problem. Maybe where should I go? China. No, China is nonsense also. So where should I go? I don't know. So people are in anxiety, and they're uncertain about the future. Will I have a job? Will I not have a job? Will there be the United States of America, or will it be the divided states of America? We don't know, right? This, like 160, 170 years ago, this was not the United States where we're sitting right now. This belonged to Russia. Yeah. And the Indians, right? I mean, the Russians didn't occupy it completely. They occupied Alaska. They didn't occupy Washington State. But it was more or less under, they would come here. The Indians. But it was gradually settled by Western people moving west, and eventually became a part of the United States. Is this going to be part of the United States in another 160 years in the future? We don't know. It could be part of Allahu Akbar, or it could be part of some Chinese government. We don't know. So all these things are fluid. These boundaries are all artificial. Actually, there's only one proprietor, Krishna. Bhaktiram Yagyatabasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He's Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, the proprietor of every place and everything. So, therefore, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men can be solved. Now, do they teach this in school? No. They say, you can solve your problems by getting a job and working hard and making money and engage, enjoy life with your money. So that's what they're teaching in school. They're not teaching that the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men can be solved. Everyone should therefore take to Krishna consciousness and make his or her life perfect. Is anyone teaching this in any school? No, they're not teaching this. And therefore, sending your kids to schools where they don't teach this is actually a type of abuse of the children. They should be taught that the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men can be solved. We have to be convinced of this ourselves. Otherwise, we can't teach it, even to our own kids. So, therefore, this hearing and chanting together means that we will eventually come to a consensus understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. That means we all come to the same conclusion, that devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men can be solved. This should be our motto. A motto is something that gives us guidance for our whole life. It is the ultimate quintessential value that defines who we are, what we're doing, what our aspirations are, what our accomplishments are, etc. Okay, so Vidura, although he's born a Sudra, he is a first-class person. But some people only identify people by their varna or their ashrama or their occupation or their family of birth or the country of birth, etc. But one should be recognized rather by their culture. Is their culture devotional service, or is their culture sense gratification? That should be the way we should define people or recognize people. So, Prabhupada says, even in the ordinary moral codes maintained by Chanakya Pandit, the great politician and moralist, there's no harm in taking lessons from a person who may be by birth less than a Sudra. Well, less than a Sudra? They're not even in the Varnashram system. But if they have knowledge of Krishna and they're living according to that knowledge, then you can take instruction from them. So, even if one is born a Sudra, if one has knowledge of Krishna, then one can, and follows it, then one can take instruction from that person. So, the duty of a person who has knowledge of Krishna and is living according to Krishna consciousness, they have a duty. What is their duty? That is to spread Krishna consciousness. Your duty is not to live a good life and enjoy the, let's say, the benefit of being Krishna conscious in this world, and as the French philosopher Voltaire said, and cultivate your garden. See, actually, that is it sounds nice, but actually it is a satirical picture that, you're just interested in your own little garden. You're not interested in anybody else's garden or the whole world. So, no, that's not the life of a devotee. Just like Vidura, he's so busy taking care of all the impious persons, right? And Prabhupada says there are more impious people than pious people, right? At least in the material world. Not in the spiritual world, of course, but in the material world, especially in Kali Yuga, over 75% increasing are impious. And there's hardly 1/4 of the population that's somewhat pious. And that number is decreasing. So Yamaraj is always busy in his Platonic kingdom punishing the doers of sinful acts. So that's not an easy job, right? Just like if you're a policeman, it's not an easy job, right? You have to deal with the people who break the laws or are creating disturbances in society, right? It's a very tough job nowadays, and many policemen are resigning. They don't want to do it anymore. It's too complicated now. Before the use of, let's say, the use of violence had some kind of definition. Now, the use of violence in order to subdue a wrongdoer is changing, and the rules of engagement are getting so complicated that the policemen don't want to do it anymore. Not all of them, but many of them. It's too dangerous for them. Besides, like yesterday, two policemen walked into it's called some kind of a milkshake shop in New York City, and they were given 2 milkshakes. They drank it, and immediately they went to the hospital. They was poisoned. So they can't even go into a restaurant and eat something or drink something nowadays. There's such a antipathy toward policemen, people in uniform. Okay, so being a Mahajan, it is the duty of Yamaraj to preach the cult of devotion to the people of the world, as Narada, Brahma, and other Mahajans do. So, if you become a devotee, your obligation is to preach Krishna consciousness to whoever you meet. That is our duty. That is our obligation. When you don or when you put on the clothing of a devotee, with the tilak and everything, they expect this of you, that you have knowledge of Krishna and you're willing to share it, and you have a merciful nature like Krishna, so you give everyone a chance to become Krishna conscious. Okay, so even if one is cursed, like Vidura was cursed, as Yamaraj, he was cursed because he gave a severe punishment to this Mundaka Muni, and Yamaraj considered it the right thing to do, and the Muni thought it was too harsh and he cursed him. But even one who's cursed, for example, one time Lord Chaitanya was cursed by a Brahmana who took his thread and broke it with his finger and cursed him. But it didn't affect Lord Chaitanya. And in that purport to that pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada says any devotee who's strictly following Krishna consciousness will not be affected by a curse. So, even especially you go to certain countries like Fiji and Africa and some parts of America and Russia, people believe in black magic, and there are so-called priests or shamans or whatever they are. They are paid to do cursing. Even sometimes ISKCON Brahmanas also learn how to do this, and people pay them or they request them to curse someone, and they do it. You might say, "What? Are you kidding?" No, I'm not kidding. There are some Brahmanas in ISKCON that do this. So, but if you're following Krishna consciousness strictly, then you'll not be affected by the curse. And if you're not following, if you're mixing Krishna consciousness with sense gratification, then you're open to being affected by this type of very inauspicious curses. Many times people come to me and they say, Prabhu, please do something. I think I've been cursed, So I said, well, I'm not the only one who has to do something. You also have to do something. What can I do? Just repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What will that do? What will that do? That'll give you a chance to associate directly with Krishna. And if Krishna is with you all the time, no curse will affect you. See? So people think, give me a blessing, give me a blessing. The blessing is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. How many more blessings you want? Right? That's the greatest blessing in the world. This mantra given by Lord Chaitanya, brought by Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda from the spiritual world. It is not a material, mundane vibration. It's actually transcendental, coming from the transcendental world. It's your connection to Krishna. There's no greater connection than this. Okay, so therefore, the conclusion is that Vidura was never a Sudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. So Vaishnava is superior to Brahmanas. And unless a Brahmana becomes a Vaishnava, like for example, you have Brahmanas, so-called Brahmanas, who are worshippers of Shiva, or the Brahmanas, they worship Sai Baba. Other Brahmanas, we have Brahmanas in Seattle that are worshipping Sai Baba. They are not Brahmanas. Only a person who worships Vishnu or Krishna is a Brahmana. They are some kind of a priest, yeah, but not a genuine Brahmana. Brahmana is someone who is preaching and worshipping Brahma, or the absolute truth. It's not just because you have a big belly and a Mercedes and a gold chain and you can say some mantras that you're a Brahmana. You have to be a genuine worshiper. And by the way, Brahmanas have a vow of poverty. Although they receive many donations, they distribute it to needy people. And they never changed their lifestyle, just like Sudama Vipra Brahmana. He never changed his lifestyle, although he was endowed with great riches and opulence by Krishna. No, I mean, his wife wanted to enjoy it, yeah, but he was not interested in that. It didn't change his lifestyle. And the Goswamis, they were the highest Vaishnava Brahmanas, but they had the most strict and simple and austere life by choice, not by force, because they were so interested in Krishna consciousness that it didn't matter to them if they had a place to sleep. In fact, they would sleep under a different tree every night. So one time Prabhupada was on a morning walk and he stopped and he was looking on the ground under a tree, and devotees said, and then Prabhupada pointed to the ground. He said, "See, even the birds are attached. They're passing stool from the same branch all the time." So he was seeing all the droppings underneath the branch of a tree. So you see, this attachment to home and hearth, this attachment to family, it's not only human beings, it's animals also. And then the attachment to sex life, it's not only human beings, the animals also. They're very attached to it. So to break those type of material attachments is not an easy thing. But it becomes easy to do if we take seriously to Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions about this purport? Yeah. Yes. Attachment to sense gratification. If you're sitting down listening to a lecture, but you have strong attachment to sex life, you're not really hearing properly. Because it's going in one ear and out the other because of that attachment. You don't want to hear it. In fact, sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't want to go to the class. It's always the same thing. No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. It's always the same class." Well, it's not the same class, but it's the same truth. That these are the four things that are the pillars of sin that keep us entangled in the material world. Right? And of those four, sex life is the most prominent thing that keeps people. In fact, that's the main reason why people came to the material world and wanted to leave Krishna, for sense gratification. So, if a person says, "Oh, it's always the same thing, don't eat meat, don't do this, don't do that," it's not positive. I want to hear something positive. When I go to some New Age guru, he's always positive. You can be God. You can, in this lifetime, attain anything you want. You can order the universe to satisfy your beckoning. Well, what kind of philosophy is that, right? That's the philosophy of sense gratification. So when someone is preaching the philosophy of sense gratification, everyone's interested. When someone is preaching that the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, which is do's and don'ts, yamas and niyamas, they don't like it. They don't want to hear the don'ts. They just want to hear do's that promote sense gratification. So therefore, gurus that preach do's that promote sense gratification, they're very popular. They got hundreds and thousands of devotees, right? They give lectures and hundreds and thousands of people come, right? Because they're preaching the gospel of sense gratification. But when you preach Krishna consciousness, there are yamas and niyamas, things you should do and things you shouldn't do. And if you do those things that you should do, then you lose the taste for those things that you shouldn't do. Right? But someone who keeps a strong attachment to the sinful things, even though they're hearing, they don't take it seriously. Right? So somehow or other we have to break that attachment by, just like if you have a glass of water but there's ink in it. But if you keep pouring water into the glass, eventually all the ink goes away and it's clear water. So the more we hear the nectarian instructions given by the acharyas, the more those dirty thoughts, dirty desires will eventually be washed away. Just like you keep putting water into a glass of water with ink in it, eventually all the ink will go away. Right. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.